Happy holiday, folks, and welcome to another episode of Plan A Conversations. Listen, I I am just overjoyed in this moment for so much. Of course, in the United States, we're celebrating Thanksgiving, but I have just been in this mode of being so incredibly grateful for so much for a very long period of time, and the fact that we all are coming together as a nation. And for my overseas audience, hopefully, you guys are coming to join us in this moment of gratitude. It just means so much, especially all that we're experiencing in this world and time right now. I have such a treat for you for today's conversation. But first, of course, I want to go ahead and make sure that we pay the bills and thank our sponsors. A special thank you to Mateo Records, Joshua Mateo. Be sure to check out his CD in session wherever you buy music. Again, check him out at Joshua Mateo HQ. Again, somebody who is really taking their life in a very new and creative direction. So feel free to check out his site. And of course, my special good friend, Dr. Adrian Bird out there in the BK in New York City. Thank you so much. And another great partner, James Rollins. You know, I love you, guy. He is in St. Croix, and just his friendship and his sponsorship means so much. So, as you all know, I have been talking about this new season of season 6 and the kind of voices that I want to have and the kind of experiences. And as you all know, I tend to meet my guests very by happenstance. Such is the case for today's guest. We have a friend, and her name is Nell Derek Debevoise. She is a connector of people. And when she has an insight or an inkling or aha moment, if you will, on, wait a minute, this person needs to meet that person, or this connection needs to happen to that connection, that is when a lot of these robust conversations take place. And I talked to our guests, I think last week, for maybe like literally for like 45 minutes. I did not want to get off the phone. She's incredibly awesome. We have so much to talk about today. I am welcoming author, wellness coach, CEO, and so much more, Carey Davidson. Welcome to the show, Carey.
Thank you, Clay. I'm so happy to be talking to you today. I wish we were face to face one day really soon.
Seriously, yes. This is going to happen because there's going to be a part 2 and part 3. It has to be.
I know. We should
So
just do like a month together, like a retreat.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying. And before we get into the nuts and bolts of your incredible book and your work, Carey, what are you most grateful for in this moment right now?
Okay, in this moment right now, it's being able to talk to you. I
Mm,
like right this second, right before we went on air, I was talking about how isolated I've been feeling. And
yeah.
we'll get a little bit more into like these 5 archetypes that I talk about, but I'm a fire type. Fire people need conversation, need touch, need connection,
Mm,
and need eye contact, need to be seen actually. And
yeah.
so just, what's going on in our world, I can't be in front of my clients as much. I can't be, involved in people's lives and helping them. So in this moment, I'm super grateful to be, I mean, even though we're kind of like through a computer screen, I mean, your
Right.
energy is so warm and inspiring and just free. It just feels really good. So I'm super grateful for this connection right now. So thank you.
Yeah. The feeling is mutual, friend. It's so great to be in your acquaintance. And also, just for our audio audience, as you all know, we have a brand new YouTube channel. So it's at Plan A with Clay. If you would like to see the beautiful Carey Davidson, as well as my gorgeous face, feel free to go ahead and hop over there as well. All right, Carey. The number one question that I have been literally dying to ask you ever since we were having that conversation is I'm standing outside of Trader Joe's to buy Thanksgiving day
Which
groceries.
door?
How do you define your purpose and call in the world? And how did you get there?
So if I were to define my purpose in the world right now, it's to help people get out of their own way and to see a really actionable path forward that's holistic, that incorporates the mind, the body, the spirit, the emotions, the team, your environment, because, we are holographic beings And a lot of times when we feel down, we're not sure what to do about it. And we try one thing or we try another thing. But really, if it's not a holistic effort, we're always going to feel like something's off.
Yes.
So that's kind of, for me, what I feel I need to bring to the world right now, specifically through the workplace. I prefer working in the corporate space. It was my first career. I was the head of HR at Columbia up at the university. And so integrating this kind of thinking into the workplace has always been fascinating to me because I really see quick change and people enjoy themselves at work better. How did I get there?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
And I asked that question specifically because I remember when I was starting out and people told me there is no way that a corporate setting is going to bring your holistic approach to well-being and wellness. And it's too much of people discovering so much of themselves that they may want to leave these corporations. And so I always find it really interesting to find a like-mind spirit who has a similar approach, but of course a different archetype for how you're doing the whole thing. So how did you get there?
Well, I started off completely by accident in human resources. I wanted to, I wanted to be an actress, go figure. And my husband at the time was in Columbia Law School. And I found out that if I could work at Columbia, I could get a tuition exemption for his tuition, and we wouldn't owe, these enormous loans going forward. So the first department that hired me was human resources. And I started to understand all of these human dynamics at work and how a person's mood impacts the productivity of a department, and how whether you got good sleep or what's going on at home, all those things will impact the dynamics of the interactions, within the team, with
Right.
your supervisor, people you supervise, with your clients, with the students. If you're at Columbia University, they're students. And I found it really frustrating that I couldn't figure out how to get at the foundation, at the root of why this was happening, because it felt like such a complex problem. And I was a kid. I did what I knew at the time. I didn't have a lot of experience. But over time, I branched out. I started running nonprofits. I met an integrative developmental pediatrician named Dr. Stephen Cowan. At this point, probably like 8 or 9 years ago. And I was working at a nonprofit where we helped people with self-healing through meditation and mindfulness. And we were creating a program called Mindful Families, where we were helping families thrive. And this was just another type of interaction, of family interaction. And Dr. Cowan had this method that he used that stemmed from ancient Chinese medicine. And it's around how we transform in the face of stress. And it's a method for deeply understanding yourself, your internal dynamics. And once you understand that, you kind of can transplant that into this kind of team picture, and you can map out how your dynamics interact and interplay with other people's, so that you can kind of create a path forward that's easy to understand and easy to implement, so that everyone has more success, whether the relationship is a parent relationship or a client relationship or a team relationship. And through working with him, I started to see how this method could really go back and help all of these confusing problems that I was seeing in HR at Columbia. So that's kind of how it all started.
And so then after you left Columbia and you went to the nonprofit, when did you sort of set out to create your own wellness practice?
I started to think about Tournesol in 2013, in the beginning of 2013. And then I actually opened in early 2014. And what happened was I started to see, I was running this nonprofit that helped people with mindfulness. And I felt personally totally disconnected from a mindfulness practice. I'm like, if this is the only path, if this is the only way, I'm going to fail. How is it possible?
What was it? Like, did you not understand it? Were you not connected to it? Like, what was it exactly?
For me, it was impatience. It was boredom.
Mm.
It was,
Mm.
I couldn't, it's meditation, right? So there's the guidance is, if a thought comes, allow it to come up and allow it
Mm-hmm.
to leave. And I
Right.
gotta tell you, I'm sitting there and I'm like, go away. And then it would come back. And it would be things I love to think about.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't, and I'm just like, I'm just not good at this. So I'm just never gonna be good at this. And so it was almost like this thing that all the research and all the scientists are saying is great for your mind and your health and your body and
Mm.
reducing stress. I failed at. So I was gonna just stink at being healthy.
Go figure, just let it
Right?
go. Yeah.
So I felt like there had to be other people like me. I think.
Listen, one of my best friends who's an avid listener, Sasha, she is nodding right now of this podcast. She is nodding her head right and left. Shout out to Sasha Prince. Go ahead.
Ah,
Yeah, this is real. This is very real.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I felt like, I have had moments in my life where I feel great
Mm.
and where I feel balanced and where I can self-regulate and I'm
Right.
super self-aware. So what are the components of that?
Mm-hmm.
What's the ingredients and how can I kind of create that model and reach for it when I need it, or use it to help
Mm.
me become more resilient so that these
Right.
outrageous stress states and anxiety don't really happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of what started me down this path of like, well, does anything like this exist? Maybe I can find
Right.
someone like this to work for. And I found little pockets, like people were practicing, integrative medicine or, saunas, or there
Yeah.
were just little pockets of things. There was functional medicine, there was Ayurvedic nutrition, Chinese, medicine, energy work. And I
Right.
felt like I just didn't know how to decide what was for me. I
Mm.
didn't know how to dose it, right? How do you dose energy work? How do you dose
Mm.
Ayurveda? And how do I know I'm so different from everyone else?
Right.
So I thought,
That's such a fair question. No, it really is.
yeah,
Go ahead. Mhm.
yeah, it just like there's no, on the one hand, there's no regulation, right? If
Mhm.
you think about the Western model, healthcare is really, really regulated. And,
Right.
um, and, you know, more natural ways of achieving health and balance are not so regulated. Do we want
Mhm.
regulation? Should there be something in the middle? I mean, because still, I think we need to know how to dose it. To some
Exactly.
degree, it would be helpful. So,
Right.
so I started Tournesol to kind of, in a sense, create that
Mhm.
through this 5 archetypes model that I learned with Dr. Cowan,
Mhm.
and to also be a home where people could come and get all the pieces of what they needed. Because,
Yeah.
if we ignore our sleep and we only exercise, or if we ignore our digestive tract and only do energy work,
Yes.
we're gonna feel lopsided. And lopsided
Mhm.
doesn't feel good.
And I love that approach because again, I have met so many people and have had so many different client interactions where they're saying, "Oh, but I just want to focus in on this area. You're bringing in too much into the conversation." And
Yeah,
I keep telling them, "No, you're going to work on one area, and then the other side is it's going to need healing as well. It's going to be very reactive."
yeah.
So how did we get to this incredible book that I cannot put down?
Oh,
The 5 Archetypes, Discover Your True Nature and Transform Your Life and Relationships. For our audio audience, I'll have all the links at the base of the podcast. Carey, how did this brilliant genius of a work just like come to you? Like how did you bring it?
Uh, good question, because as you can tell, I'm very, and in order to write that, I needed to get really focused.
Right.
um, so I would say at this point, like almost 3 years ago, I
Mhm.
met someone who would become a client, and she's a writer. And I was seeing her on and off for about 6 months to deal with her challenges at work and in her personal relationships.
Mhm.
And as we progressed through her growth using the 5 archetypes, which is because what I always use with clients, um, she she finally one day came to me and she's like, "This has to be a book. I told my publisher about you. She's going to call you." And at that point, I had gone through several years of so and so is going to call you, and so such and such is going to
I
happen.
totally get it. Yeah.
This news outlet, da 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 da, and I
Mhm.
am really excited, and then really disappointed when it didn't work out. So I thought, okay, this at this point, I was like, "This is really sweet, and if it happens, it happens."
Mhm.
Sure enough, I they called the publisher, the head of the imprint that Simon and Schuster that published my book came to me, and we just threw around this idea of what it could look like for about 4 hours in my office.
Mm.
And she's like, Carey, this is a whole series of books: the 5 archetypes of love, the 5 archetypes of dating, the 5 archetypes of
Yes.
parenting, the 5 archetypes of being at work. And I'm like, yeah, because it's really kind of a really very specific look at understanding who you are, how you use your resources, and how you use your triggers in order to always
Mm.
stay in the flow.
Mhm.
And you want to do that as a parent, as someone who runs a business, someone who's part of a team, someone who,
Mhm.
plays soccer, someone who engages in the world. So
And really quick before you go on, when you say to stay in the flow, what do you mean by that? Just for folks who maybe like flow, that sounds great, but what does that mean?
to me, flow means to be able to be resilient to triggers, right? So not to go, well, to be self-aware. And at its highest point, it's being in this state of self-mastery where you're well aware of your triggers, what you look like and feel like in stress and in strength. And
Uh-huh.
you can self-regulate in those moments and not be so much in reactive state. Instead, go
Mm.
into creative state. So, like,
Mm.
for example, if, somebody criticized my book. No, somebody gave me a bad review, right? My initial fire reaction is anxiety and panic,
Mhm.
and then thinking I stink. Like,
Yeah.
all right, thinking that it's true, believing it, and meshing myself in that person's belief. There's
Mm.
no separation between what I know about myself and what they're saying about me.
Right.
And when I go into that state, there's panic and self-doubt. And so
Mm.
what happens is my triggers will always bring me there. Like, that's kind of how it'll feel. But now,
Mhm.
because I'm super well aware of what it sounds like and feels like, I can observe it and like step back from it and not
Wow.
go into like the whole. I mean, I could stay in that depression for a good week at least. And
Yeah.
call all my friends and have everyone try to cheer me up. But, in the flow is like there's kind of an ebb and flow throughout the day. It's like the universe constantly gives you the same lesson until you kind of
Mm.
get it. And then you
Yeah.
don't really repeat it. It no longer hurts anymore. I mean, you don't cry anymore when you don't get the cotton candy.
Right.
When you were 3, it was like a daily occurrence. We no longer need that lesson.
Mhm.
I mean, some of us. I still cry. No one gives me candy. I swear, ask my kids.
Oh my gosh. And so you're in the office, you and your publisher come together, then what happens?
So I had to write a proposal.
Mm-hmm.
And she printed out a couple options. It was kind of like, she was telling me it was a done deal.
Mm.
I'm like, all right, I'm one of those things that I can't, it's hard to believe. It just seemed so hard to believe for me. So she made it easy. She gave me two, examples of what a book proposal looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And I went ahead and I wrote this proposal. And I would say like a month later, I sat down in her office with a couple of editors, and I was just kind of blown away. I took a picture, and so their office is on 6th Avenue in the 50s, I think, or high 40s. And I
Uh-huh.
walked in, and there's this huge desk that says Simon and Schuster in huge gold letters.
Wow.
I took a selfie. I'm like, I can't believe I'm here. But I couldn't even share it because I couldn't believe it was really going to happen. Right. Because from the
Wow.
time you write a proposal to the time a book comes out is almost a year.
Right, right.
So I have all these pictures of myself I kept private along the way, not to
Mm-hmm.
jinx it. So I wrote my proposal. They loved it. And they said, go ahead, write the fire chapter. Let's start there.
So when you got that initial okay, the confirmation of you're going to do this, was that a point where you're like, it's real? Did you know it was real at that moment?
Yeah. Yeah. I got pretty excited. Very giddy, very
Yeah.
giggly, very excited. It was just really kind of unbelievable, but at the same time,
Mm.
I tempered it with like, okay, things happen. Maybe it's a good shot that it will happen at this point.
Yeah.
But so I was really super excited. I had to change my life a little bit
You
because
said you had to change your life.
a little bit, yeah,
Tell me.
so this happens like in March, April.
Hmm.
And my full manuscript was due August 15th.
Hmm.
And so in
What
order,
year is this?
um, so it wasn't last year, it was the year before.
Okay. So
Yeah.
2018.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's crazy. How
Right.
so fast. Wow. Okay.
And here we are. Yeah.
Yeah. So I went from a lifestyle where I was running into Midtown and seeing clients all the time and
Hmm.
running a facility to getting up every morning around 5:30 and sitting at my
Mm.
dining room table and writing until it got dark out, day after day after day.
And did you have that discipline beforehand, or did you have to adapt and learn? Look, you're looking like no.
I have discipline. Oh my God. It was so hard. It was so hard,
Mm.
but I got into the flow of it. I think
Mhm.
because, I don't know, it almost felt like I was channeling it, that
Mm.
it's just something that needed to happen. It's something that the world needed.
And I ask you that because so many people say to me all the time, there's no way that I can write a book because I lack the discipline. And so when someone who characterizes themselves as not being a disciplined person that does it and they crank out this genius of a work, it's possible. It really is. So if I'm sitting, listening to this podcast or watching, and immediately I'm saying, Carey, I really can't do what you have done, what would be a step that you would offer them in order to sort of get started and move beyond that blockage of I can't write a book. I'm not disciplined enough.
Mm. So what worked for me was kind of that push. I personally would not have been able to do it if I was self-publishing and I didn't have someone on my back be like, you got a deadline of August 15th and there is money on the line, baby. I
Mm,
was like, oh, okay. I needed that in order to get disciplined. And
got
that's
it.
like apparent in my 5 archetype scores. Like I could be, if
Mhm.
you show me your scores, I'd be able to tell you something similar about how to motivate you. So the way to
Nice.
get motivated depends on who you are. I needed that nudge. I needed that push. I
Mhm.
needed someone behind me. I needed an editor saying, yeah, it was due 5 minutes ago.
Where are you? Let's go.
So the discipline comes when I'm adequately pushed, when I have an agenda, a plan, a goal.
Mm.
When I can envision how it's going to actually inspire hope in people, all of
Mm.
that is how I get motivated.
And you got all this from the five archetypes.
Yeah,
Okay.
totally.
So now people are like, Carey, I need to know about the archetypes. So let's get into this. Can you break down what are the five archetypes and what do they mean and all that great stuff?
Sure. So the five archetypes, they correspond to the five elements of nature: fire, earth, metal, water, and wood.
Mm.
And this system derives from ancient Chinese medicine. And it's this philosophical way to kind of see human transformation. How do we respond in the face of distress, in the face of discomfort? Do we go into reactive states or do we go into creative states? And so when you think about how do you want to be as a human, or how do you want your team to be at work in your company? Do you want people who easily go into reactive states, or people who go into creation under stress? And you
Mm.
want people to be resilient. And there's a method for teaching it that's super, super, super simple, that's baked into 5,000 years of, ancient healing practice.
Mm-hmm.
So these five, I will give you, they're kind of like, once you understand your primary, and we all have
Mm-hmm.
one that's primary, we have all five in us that kind of help us move and navigate through our challenges. But we have
Okay.
one primary way that guides the way we interact with our environment.
Mm.
And so I will give you kind of the basic character traits of each of the five.
Perfect.
So, fire people, their gift to the world is joy and hope and optimism. They inspire people to get over sad times, to not harp on the
Mm.
negativity. They'll
Mm-hmm.
tell you a good joke. They're really good about relaxing and having a good time. They are out of the box thinkers. They are intuitive thinkers. They tend to feel what to do next, and they can easily glide into that space.
You're definitely fire, Carey.
I was gonna ask if you could guess, but I like so give it away.
No,
I can't.
you're 100% fire. Just from our brief interaction, it is clear, friend.
I know.
Okay.
Ah. So fire people, their biggest fears revolve around disconnect and loss of love. And so those
Mm.
are the situations that will kick up my stress states.
Okay.
So see, I'm leaving, just even talking about it, my throat goes like that. So,
Interesting.
yeah, in stress, fire people will go into panic and anxiety easily, big drama over little things, big
Mm.
freakouts.
Mm.
Um, they they will overcare about keeping people happy. They will overcare about pleasure. So they will look to have fun or please others more than they will look to take care of business or do what needs to be done.
Got it. Okay.
So then we have earth people. Earth
Mm.
people, their gift to the world is unity and community and caregiving. They need to be needed. They are they are the nurturers among us. They hold space for everyone to grow and for ideas to germinate and to come to life. They
Okay.
gather everything you need. You can trust them. They totally have your back. They're the hub of where everyone goes on the block to hang out. They want to feed you. They want to be
Mm.
nurturing. um, let's see. Earth types, their biggest fears revolve around abandonment and the idea of disunity, that things and people and relationships will fall apart.
Wow.
Um, Under stress, they tend to worry and go into overwhelm, and can become inert. They can't move forward. They become paralyzed, wondering how they can possibly please everyone. And we know we can't,
Right.
right?
Right.
But they need to. They have this need to be needed by everyone. And
Mm.
so that's earth. Then you have metal. Metal
Mm-hmm.
people, their gift to the world is beauty and perfection. They,
Mm.
at their highest level, they are amazing at gratitude and forgiveness, understanding that there's a higher purpose, elevating the mundane to something superior. Um, uh-oh.
This might sound familiar. We'll get to my self-assessment later. I'm not sure which I'm just listening. Go ahead.
Okay. Metal people, let's see, their biggest fear is making a mistake or being wrong. Under stress, they can focus on what's wrong rather than what's right. They'll focus on the past rather than the future. They will over focus on small details, kind of like the metaphor, like the forest for the trees stuff.
Right.
They can't see the forest. They can see the little bug on the little twig on the tree. They get myopic in view, rigid in thinking, stuck, overcritical of themselves and others.
Okay.
Then you have water people. Water people are wise sages. Their gift to the world is peace. They tend to be able to distill truth out of mystery easily. They're philosophers, dreamers, poets. They tend to get addicted to thinking. They love to think and to solve problems and to listen. They are the quietest among us. They don't get caught up in all the emotional stuff that the rest of us get caught up in. They are amazing problem solvers. Their biggest fears revolve around becoming irrelevant. Right? They are all about deep meaning, and they believe that they contribute deeply meaningful things to the world. So if you think about the opposite of that is complete irrelevance. And so, making the wrong decision, so being wrong, it's a little bit different than making a mistake, but being not unwise is kind of their biggest fear. Now, under their stress states, when they feel triggered, they go into over isolation. So they go deep, deep, deep inside, and they can, because they over isolate so much, they are prone to depression.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So then we have wood types. Wood people, their gift to the world is freedom and bravery and creation and initiation, trailblazing, entrepreneurism. They make things happen. They don't back down because of minor obstacles. Like, obstacles are just like another fun thing to move around as far as wood people are concerned. Wood people are the types to they're very adventurous. They might go to the airport airport. These are like in the old days before COVID.
Right.
In the old, Mom, were you alive when you know? They might go to the airport with like a change of underwear, and that's it, with no plans. And they'll go out and they'll pick a place to go for the weekend and just wing it. They love that type of unexpected, unplanned, just excitement and adventure. Wood people, their biggest fears revolve around confinement. Anyone or anything getting in their way of moving with speed. Fast, first, best. They like to get things done.
Yeah. This also sounds familiar, but I digress. Continue, Carey. Continue.
So under stress, a wood person, when they feel confined, they can, as fast as they do everything else, is as fast as their emotional state gets kicked up when they're triggered. And their emotional state is anger. They'll come out with frustration. It's like a burst. And then as fast as it came, it goes away. They're done. And in those moments, in those bursts of frustration, their self-awareness can shrink. So they're not as aware of the impact of their stress state on the people around them. And so they'll have a burst. Everyone else will be like, ooh. And they'll be like, what's wrong? I'm over it. Let's go.
I'm okay. Yeah.
So, and again, these are examples in the extreme. just to
Uh-huh.
like really be able to accentuate the differences. We are all a mix. We all exist somewhere, even though our primary is one of them. We exist along a spectrum of strength and stress within that. Not
Mm-hmm.
everyone explodes in anger all the time if they're a wood
Right.
person. It may, when you're feeling your absolute worst, when you're overextended, this is kind of what comes out when you're not at your best for a long time. You tend to go like that.
And so does this change as we like children, adults, midlife? Like how do we navigate where we are in terms of just life?
So your primary will always remain your primary throughout your lifetime. You will always
Mm,
engage in the world and offer the gifts that correspond to your primary. Like when you start to go out into the working world after college, right? You tend to be the same kind of contributor. You're either, a data entry operator because you love that consistency, and it's
right.
never surprised. It's always the same thing, and you know where you put your shoes, and you put this, and you did that. It's just like nothing is chaotic. Everything is expected, and it just lays out before you as is. Or you're the kind of person who can't sit behind a desk. You're not all of
Right.
a sudden going to be like, I'm going to be a data entry operator now after
Right.
like door to door sales. Like you're just
Yeah.
not. So so our primary remains our primary. The other four fluctuate around us depending on our context, our internal and our external environment. And it can
Mm,
fluctuate from day to day. Like if you had a cold for a week, or if you didn't eat dinner last night, if you're
mhm,
exhausted, and if you had a drink last night and you don't deal well the next morning and you have to give a presentation, if you're having a fight with your brother, if you can't find your homework,
mhm.
all of this impacts your ability to remain stable. That's the flow that I was talking about before. Like, how can you
Right.
stay resilient even in the face of your internal and external environment being very much kind of unpredictable? Now it's
Mhm.
very unpredictable, but we really can't control much.
Yeah.
So how do you stay? And this is kind of a system for using all of those skill sets, those forces within each of the elements, these archetypes,
Mhm,
to look at. When you look at your scores, you can figure out where you need to start working to build resilience, and
mhm,
where your soft spots are going to be,
mm.
where you're going to have least tolerance, and where what kind of triggers are going to be harder for you to have resilience in the face of. And so,
So I could imagine if I am a manager of people, if look, I'm a manager of myself, this is groundbreaking, really interesting work. And the good thing about it is too, it seems to take away the shame and the blame of my triggers are bad. I'm a bad person. It just really gives you a way to look at it differently so that it can support you in being in the flow. And what's really interesting too, and I would love if to hear your thoughts on this, does this work also lead you towards discovering what your purpose is? Could we say that?
yes, I was hoping you'd go there. Yeah. Yeah. There's so much baked in here. It's so funny. I have a lot of people around, my age, like 20 something. I'm
Mhm.
kidding. But I know you couldn't tell. Like people
Not at all, Carrie. Not at all.
like people in their 40s and 50s and even 60s who come to me thinking about, am I in the right job? Did I do the right career? Am I in the right
Mm,
relationship? What's my purpose? They feel kind of lost. So
right.
this system actually identifies exactly how to fulfill your purpose and to
Mm,
feel to feel that amazing balance that
mhm.
comes with knowing that you're fulfilling your purpose. Now, it won't tell you go out and get XYZ job,
Right.
but it will give you the kind of the characteristics and the traits of what that type of endeavor in the world looks like,
Mm.
and what it offers to humanity at its highest level.
And I could also imagine too in that relationship piece. How amazing would it be to be able to sit across from your partner, your spouse, significant other, boyfriend, girlfriend, and to be able to know, like, these are your triggers, these are my triggers, these are ways in which we can support each other around that.
Yeah. Yeah. I use it all the time. I use it anytime I hire someone, they take
Mm-hmm.
the assessment, and before they walk in, I know how to motivate this person to be his or her best. I had
Mm.
an intern apply once. I received his application and his writing samples, and it was beyond a perfect match. On paper, it was
Mm-hmm.
a perfect match. Then he took the assessment and I got his scores. Okay. So this was kind of a desk job to sit
Mm-hmm.
back and do like social media and research, and not, it wasn't a movement job. You sit in,
Mm-hmm.
butt in seat for hours.
Chained to the desk.
Yeah. And this guy, his scores were off the charts wood energy. Like
Mm.
high 80s. I think it was high 80s. And when I spoke to him on the phone, I'm like, we have to talk about the requirements of this job. I don't think you're going to be happy. And when I told him, he's like, oh, yeah, no. I mean, can you imagine if I had just gone by the fact that he was energized and motivated and excited, and
Mm-hmm.
his paperwork was like a perfect fit, how miserable we both would have been investing in
Exactly.
that relationship. So what I did instead was I thought, he's such a good fit and he's so motivated. I'm going to create a job for him. And so
Mm.
I had a room in the downstairs of my office that was a
Mm-hmm.
group room, an event space, and
Mm-hmm.
it needed to be rented out more. And I said, listen, I'm going to give you the opportunity to fill up that room as much as you can, and you'll make 20% of everything you bring in.
Mm.
And so, would people like a challenge? Would
Yeah.
people like sales? Would people like to close deals? Would people like
Okay.
to move around and figure out how to make it, like take an empty space and fill that thing up? Right. And so he was so excited and so motivated, and all that just from his scores. So, yeah, I use it at work. I use it in my love relationships. I use it with my kids. I use it with clients. My clients
Mm.
fill it out before they come in. So I know how to dress. I know how much to tone down my fire. I know how to speak to
Whoa.
them, how to motivate them to do the things that will make them feel better. Because each of
Yeah.
us, if I were to give you like a very precise thing, like every day you have to eat breakfast at 8, lunch at 12,
Mm-hmm.
snack at 4, da da da, and it has to be these things. And what else? Yeah, and I was just very rigid and no
Mm-hmm.
flexibility. You probably wouldn't like it very much.
Right.
If your primary was metal,
Mm-hmm.
you would be really annoyed at me if I said, there's some flexibility in this plan. You can kind of pick and choose. They'd be like, tell me what to do. So yeah,
So,
it is. It's very helpful.
wow. Okay. So I did an assessment last night for you. I'm so curious to hear, what are my results? What did you find out?
Okay, so there's a lot of hope for you.
Okay.
You're going to
I
be
was hoping.
it's all good. All right. So your primary was wood energy.
Okay.
I know that
Wood.
you identified with metal when I was talking about like perfection and beauty and all
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff. So wood and metal have an interesting relationship. They can sometimes be a little bit confusing because the output can kind of feel similar, but the motivations underneath are completely divergent, very
Mm-hmm.
different. Um, Wood can't stand criticism. Wood can take. Stop! You can make me
Who?
laugh through this
Who?
whole thing.
Who? Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Okay.
We're back.
Right. Metal, metal is highly critical.
Yeah.
Metal can't, metal has, metal's biggest fear is making a mistake or being wrong, right?
Mm,
Because they can't stand chaos. They need things to always be the same.
mhm,
And so if their vision of the world is wrong or if it's a mistake, it shakes their
mm,
foundation of what keeps them feeling okay, of
mhm,
that like sameness, that the
mhm,
expectations are always going to be there, right? Always going
mm,
to be met, that there is no flexibility in terms of like how the outcome might look.
mm.
Wood actually loves and is excited about creating a future that you may not know what it is right now, but you're going to
Yeah.
build it,
Mhm,
and you're always forward looking. Metal is always backwards looking.
mhm,
Metal is the one that like builds structures on the way things have always been.
mhm.
They build the rules. They have the policies and procedures handbooks.
Yeah.
You know, they can be very precise lawyers who like go
Mhm.
to the letter of the law and what history has always said.
Uh-huh.
That feels safe. Wood is all about building a new structure, a new way, a new world. It's kind of where we are right now in our world. I feel we're in a like a wood state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting that you say that because in one of my creative jobs, I remember a manager coming to me at Ralph Lauren, and he said to me, "You can create the space and do the budget at the same time. I need a analytical creative." Um, and he goes, "That's who I think you are." And so as I've been building, Plan A, and one of my good friends tells me this all the time, you can build a structure, but you also can see the creative part, the future as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's I would say that's apparent um in your scores
Mm.
that you don't. So your metal, can I say what your scores are?
Please,
Like,
please.
so your wood score was 76.5, your
Hmm.
fire 72.9, which is
Hmm.
why I will say why I chose to be free with my fiery self in your presence. Not every, if you look back at other interviews I've done, I don't go all fire because I'm
Ah.
aware of my interviewer and about how they would feel with me
Hmm.
doing that. So I tone
Mm.
down when I'm like being interviewed by someone who's more metal
Hmm.
or even more earth.
But are you feeling that you can still be yourself
Totally. I
when?
have a lot of clients who ask me that. They're like, "Are you
Okay.
telling me I can't be myself?" That. I'm like, no, it's almost like it's what happens is if you can come up from a place of empathy, right?
Hmm.
Imagine you're a school teacher in a classroom filled with 20 kids, right? Each of these children is one of these primary natures. Each of the five has a very different learning style. They learn different ways. Would people learn by doing? They don't want to wait and listen to instructions and like they're like, let me just try it. Let me just try to
Right.
build that, computer. I don't care
Hmm.
if it's got legs hanging out that way. Whatever. I can make it work. They want to feel, they want to like impact, they want to touch the thing, they want to try it. They don't care about making mistakes
Hmm.
are like are the trophies they have lining the walls. They look at all my failed attempts, but like look where they got me, like I tried.
Wow.
Metal is like they don't want any trophies for failed attempts. They're going to practice at home 1,000 times before they
Hmm.
show the teacher,
Yeah.
right? Fire people learn by experiences and feeling. They need to intuit it. I need to like embody it to understand it.
Hmm.
Earth people learn by context and stories. They need to
Mm.
gather all the research. They need to gather all the pieces and understand how they intertwine, how they interact, how they intersect, and what impacts what how. Water people learn by thinking, by
Hmm.
fantasy. They just need quiet. They need to absorb it, and they need to think about it and toss it around until it makes sense for them.
Hmm.
And so if I were to come to a place and be like, well, screw them if they don't like how silly I am, I'm not going to teach most of the room. Not only am I not going
Got
they're
it.
not going to walk away learning anything, they will have felt icky. So
Mm-hmm.
each of the five has nurturing relationships and challenging relationships.
Mm-hmm. And
So
so it's basically then just kind of like being able to synthesize how someone else can receive the information and doing it in an empathetic way
yeah,
without moving or shifting who you authentically are at your core.
right. Like I
Okay.
can still be fiery without being, you know, totally silly.
Right.
I can still inspire hope and
Mm-hmm.
help you think about the bright side and make eye contact and be kind and suggest that we relax instead of
Mm-hmm.
working really hard 24/7. I can still do that and help you overcome grief and help you get out of a depression and see the value in social interaction
Mm-hmm.
without being a complete goofball.
Wow.
And I'll still, it doesn't mean I'm not me. It means I'm caring for you and how you learn new information and how you grow.
Imagine this work, and I mean, is going beyond clearly just you and I, but imagine this work being done on a global level, and like everyone being able to have access to this information as knowledge. And just to put a button on it, for then my archetypes, they're closely meshed together. What are areas that you think I should pay attention to, and maybe areas I should less pay attention to, and also for our listeners so that they can have this understanding as they're going to take the assessment after
Yeah.
after our show.
So I wrote out your stuff. I took some notes, and that's why I'm looking over here. I'm not,
Okay, cool.
I'm not totally distracted. I mean, fire
No.
gets distracted, but I'm
You're
like,
good.
oh, there's cotton candy over here.
Back to the candy.
Never stop. Never stop. Okay. So your lowest score was water. Your water score
Hmm.
was 56.7. So I look at the scores in their relationship to each other and how high or low they are, how wide a gap there is between highest and lowest.
Hmm.
And also in what each of these types means for you and your own growth. So each of these archetypes has body correspondences, cognitive, emotional correspondences, and spiritual, higher spiritual level, like what's my purpose
Hmm.
correspondences. Water on a physical body level is about staying hydrated. So one of
Hmm.
my first questions to you would be, do you drink enough water? And you might. Like, do
Hmm.
you feel like you're hydrated? The other physical component of water is sleep.
Hmm.
So, okay, you're killing me. So,
Continue.
so that's kind of I always go physical component
Hmm.
first, because if the body component of one of the elements is at its strongest place, there's not a container to hold the new cognitive skills I'm going to teach you.
Hmm.
Right? If you're exhausted and I'm trying to teach you about, I don't know, high levels of forgiveness, and higher all that kind of stuff, and you're exhausted, you don't have the container for it. You're just like, Carrie, can we go
Mm.
for cotton candy? Right? So I always start with the physical level. So yes, offline, maybe we could talk about some sleep stuff if you want to.
Seriously, yes.
Okay.
I am like not the best sleeper. Like even sometimes like, what is the point of sleep? Can we just go and work? Okay, continue.
Well, that's a very wood thing to say. Wood
Hmm.
people, okay, I wanted to respond also how you said, like, this information needs to go global. That's a
Hmm.
very wood thing to say. Wood people think global. They don't think small. They're just like, you wouldn't be like, "Oh, let's create like a cute little t-shirt for your book that like I'll wear." You'll be like, oh my gosh, let's create a global movement. It's a very wood way to think. That's just kind of when I talk about how you don't change, you would never work in that like small way. You're always going to think bigger. how do I make this bigger? How do I expand it?
This is so true.
So you're not going to do data entry. I don't think you'll ever do.
No,
No.
no,
Your
Carrie,
soldiers are like,
no.
no. Oh my gosh. So then the cognitive component
Hmm.
of water is listening. And listening in a way where you're not thinking at the same time. Like listening to
Mm,
observe and gather compassionate information about your surroundings.
okay.
And there are lots of like neuroplasticity exercises I give to clients to teach
Hmm.
them how to do that, especially when water's their lowest. Because if
Hmm.
I just went out to you and said, just like, stop doing that, you'd be like, okay. And then it's just hard to do that because you've created a pattern.
Hmm.
And so there are neuroplasticity exercises that kind of go in through like the side door so that you're not really realizing that you're building that skill and it becomes
Nice.
easier.
Okay.
So listening is almost like, if you're in a collaborative meeting and this particular idea needs to go global, but the four other people in the room are like, let's talk about the t-shirts and let's talk about like the color of red we're going to use on the website and let's talk about what we're going to order for lunch. You'd be like, oh my god. We're talking about making this global. And so water comes in, and can you listen to what's behind that person who needs to be specific about the red
Hmm.
color? What's behind that person who wants to order lunch? He or she wants you to become more of a unit. And
I
food,
received that.
right? For food,
Yeah.
for many people, sharing a meal is bringing you guys together in harmony in a way
Hmm.
where you can see each other as equals, as teammates, and contribute and use all the skills that are brought to the table as a team, as a cohesive team. So
Hmm.
water is that ability to sink underneath the things um, that kind of we get used to how we do our stuff. Like you get used to blowing things up and making them big.
Hmm.
Water is asking you to take a step back and wait a minute. Like, can you
Hmm.
pause for a second and take in the rest of the environment, the rest of the information, and round it out and see like
Which,
what are there pieces I'm missing?
which in essence even turns to something that has been my biggest growth edge that I have been working on slowly but surely is surrender. Would that go hand in hand with?
In a way, it's funny because it depends on the context
Okay.
of surrender. But the way I'm kind of thinking of it for you, um, yeah, it's almost like wood does not like to surrender, right? Wood, if you think about like winning and losing, wood, an unbalanced wood type is that kid who like throws the board when they're gonna lose. It's like
Mm.
they can't surrender. They can't put down the king, like, and say like, oh, I lost
Mm.
the chess game. They don't like to lose. And so the idea of surrender, it's almost like you're challenging yourself to go against your very nature in the most extreme way. That's like
Mhm.
the whole idea of like the opposite of the neuroplasticity exercise, right? The neuroplasticity exercise is, can I build that water nature in you without triggering your need to win?
Mm.
And so
Mhm.
surrender is almost like, oh, it hurts. And so I got to do the thing that hurts the most to show that I
Mm.
made an effort. So, not knowing the context of the surrender that is meaningful to you, just the word itself, it's it's almost like, it relates to the two energies that are the most stressful for wood, like that metal and earth.
Mhm.
They would most like more quickly surrender than wood ever will. So um so do you want to talk about what you mean by surrender, or do you want to do that next time?
N For sake of time, next time, next
Okay.
time. Any more just insights that might be helpful just to through an example through me for other listeners?
Yeah. So your metal, yes, you have a decent amount of metal in your nature, and that is the perfectionist in you, and that is wanting it to be right and
Mm-hmm.
wanting it to be structured. Metal is how you set your own limits, right? How you set your own limits. And so in some way, when you think about surrender, in some way it's setting the limits to that would need to win or be biggest or fastest or grow, massive amounts, instead of like, can you limit it and say, how much can we do, like, you know, yes, the big picture is let's take this global, but what can we do in my neighborhood first? Or what can we do in my apartment building first? So
Yes.
setting limits so that you
Mm-hmm.
don't exhaust yourself. Each of
Mm-hmm.
us has the potential to become exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
And when you become exhausted, you go way over into the nature that's ahead of you, which is your fire. Fire is manic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fire can be unbalanced. Fire is manic, is eating too much candy, things, which then causes you to become exhausted, where you fall back into water. Since your water is not as strong, you might easily go into the unbalanced water expressions, which, as we talked about, were over isolation and depression.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so you could go into those feelings without if you don't limit yourself properly, set limits that are achievable and balanced, so you don't overdo the wood energy stuff. So, is that helpful?
Carey Davidson. Oh my gosh, it's incredibly helpful.
Oh, good.
All right, listeners, listen. We're we're at an hour. I know you all are wanting more. We have to have Carey back for a part two. And Carey, there's so much that's happening in your life that I want to even dissect and to even talk more about. There was an incredible article that you posted today on LinkedIn, as well as CareyDavidson.com, about just the shift and the change that's happening in your own personal and professional life.
Yeah.
So courageous, so amazing. And before I let you go, can you just tell our listeners like why that was important for you to do right now in this period in time?
Well, for me as a fire person, I really care about inspiring hope in people. And
Mm,
so the thing that made me so happy every day working at Tournesol was, those interactions, touching those people's lives, helping them feel better about themselves, and, you know, feeling like they actually did have a way to move forward out of despair, out of grief, or out of fear. And I really needed to communicate to everyone. I didn't want them to feel like I was letting them down, which is very
mm,
that's my problem. I
mm.
got to work on that. But, there's balance in that. And I didn't want people to feel like I didn't give it a try. I didn't, work as hard as I could. But because of COVID, we couldn't reopen the bricks and mortar. And I wanted to let people know that I'm still here. I'm still
Mm,
here as a light in your life, and
mm.
still, inspiring hope and potential is something I'll always do. I don't need a physical house. I can
Yeah.
do it with my voice and my energy and online and with clay. We're gonna change the world.
Global.
I love it.
But and really quick, the part that touched me so profoundly, and listeners, again, you can go to CareyDavidson.com to read this. She says in one of the paragraphs, in the meantime, my new chapter emerges. And it's all about helping you find your new chapter as well. Because it's clear, isn't it, that there is no longer any more going back to what once was.
Yeah.
Carey Davidson.
Mm.
Can you please let our audience know where we can learn more about you, where we can purchase your book, where we can take this incredible assessment, and any companies that are interested in connecting with you? Where can we learn all of this fabulous information?
Yes. So CareyDavidson.com, Carey Davidson, Davidson.com, has links to buying the book, to taking the free assessment, tons of blog posts that give you, deeper dives into what it all means and what to do with it, and how to connect if you want to work together one-on-one or as a company.
Carey, Thank you so much for this time. How are you gonna spend your holiday?
Well, I'll probably Zoom with all my family that's all around the United
Uh-huh.
States, and yeah, and I'm actually in Cape Cod, so
Oh, okay.
just quiet and chill, and I'll
Yeah.
try not to work too much on Thursday.
Okay. I I'm gonna try the
I
same.
know,
Okay.
I know, I know, I know.
All right, listeners. Of course, I'll have all of Carrie's information at the base of the podcast. I hope you have an amazing holiday season. Again, please go to CareyDavidson.com to learn more about Carrie. If you want to learn more about me, please visit ClaySWilliams.com. And I'm on all of your favorite social media by the handle of at Plan A with Clay. That's at Plan A with Clay, folks. Remember that Clay's with a K. Thanks for listening. I look forward to seeing you in our very next episode. Peace.